Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I have a fun sparkly project for you. I'm going to show you a bunch of techniques, so even if you don't need any more treat holders or ornaments or party favors, you can still probably get a technique or two from this video. This video is brought to you by Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them online at pegstamps.com, and don't forget to use the coupon code in the video description to save you 20% on all of your stamps. So we're going to show you a couple different ways to emboss today. Actually 3 different ways. We're going to show you 2 different ways to do like an indenting or embossed, real embossed, pressure embossing, or also called dry embossing. And I'm also going to show you some heat embossing. And what I used here was a product called embossing tinsel. Now the difference between embossing tinsel and embossing powder is the effect that you get once you use it. So this is a silver embossing powder. As you can see, it's opaque. It covers up all the ink that I used underneath, and it shows up even on this dark blue vellum. This is embossing tinsel. Embossing tinsel is a mixture of clear embossing powder and glitter, and it just gives you more a subtle sparkly effect. And I used a silver embossing ink here, and it will show you a little bit of that color through your embossing, whereas the embossing powder will completely obscure it. So you know, you can pick the right kind of powder for the kind of effect you're going for. So what we're going to do here is use a 1/4 of a sheet of vellum. So I used an 8.5 by 11 sheet of vellum, and I cut it in quarters. 1/4 piece will make your little treat pouch here. So what we're going to do is some stamping, and you can use clear embossing ink, you can use a metallic ink, anything that's going to dry slow and sticky. Since we're going to use the embossing tinsel, I'm going to use a silver just because I know it'll show up a little bit better than using a clear. I'm going to use a variety of snowflake stamps here, and I'm going to start off with my biggest ones because I want to make sure that I can fit my design in, and it's just easier to kind of build the design like this. So what I like to do is just kind of stamp out a pattern. This is going to be obviously rolled up into a favor pouch, so I don't have to worry if I have a lot of this particular star down. Oh, and by the way, when you're stamping on vellum, modern vellum is actually a really thin plastic, so this ink is going to stay wet for me long enough to do this, all of this stamping. So I'm just trying to space everything out fairly evenly. I'm not even worrying about turning my stamp because you're not going to see all of the designs at one time. I'm going to use this one here, and I will link to the stamp sets that I used. I'll link right in the video description. And I'll link to a nice embossing ink that you can use as well for this. And I really like this one. I like the ones that have a lot more open space when I'm doing embossing. Like this one's kind of detailed. I like the ones that are a little bit more graphic, a little bit more bold, because I find that, you know, especially if you're not using a detail embossing powder, if you're using something like a tinsel or, you know, just any standard embossing powder, I'm going to get a really good result from those. So what I'm going for is just like an all-over snowflake pattern paper. So this is one of those techniques that you can use to build your own backgrounds for cards, for scrapbook pages, any sort of project, wrapping paper, that sort of thing. So that's what I meant about there's a lot of techniques we're going to do today that will work for other projects, even if you're not really into this one. So I'm going to grab a scrap of paper, and I am going to cover this with my embossing powder, and I'm going to, again, like I said, use the tinsel, but you can use whatever you like. I mean, everyone has their own preferences. Just want to make sure you give it a good coating of the powder. And the excess can be poured right back into the container, so you won't waste any. A thing of embossing powder that's stored properly will last you years and years. In fact, the only time I ever had embossing powder go bad was when I didn't store it in its original container. Somebody had shared some of theirs with me, and so I had it in a little baggie, and it went bad. It just didn't emboss very well after that. But I find that if I keep it in the containers that it came in, then that's fine. And yeah, I'm going to be wearing glitter all day, just so you know. And then I'm going to hit this with my heat tool here. I like to heat it up because vellum is a type of plastic. I like to kind of heat my heat tool up, and then I bring it over to my paper to emboss. And you'll see that the powder goes kind of clear, so it goes from like white to clear when it's done. Just be careful around your fingers there. And I am keeping this in real time in the video so you know how long it takes. Embossing on vellum does go a lot quicker than regular paper, so you do want to be careful that you don't scorch it. I mean, that was only a few seconds. Look at that though, isn't that pretty? I mean, you go from not seeing anything practically to seeing this super glitzy. And the reason I chose this is because I made this as an ornament, like to hang on the tree, and then you can give them as party favors, or you could do it like as an advent calendar, and have one for every day of the month of December. I did it that way because I knew that it was going to catch Christmas tree lights and look really pretty. So the next thing we want to do is add some adhesive, and I'm going to use a really strong double-sided tape, whatever strong double-sided tape you like. I don't think like the ATG tape is strong enough for this. I would go with a Sukwon tape. This is a tape from Craft Chameleon, score tape, red line tape, any sort of tape that is really, really strong is going to work good. And I just fold in any excess that's hanging over. Now you can also put another strip down at this point, and I'm going to do that just because it can get a little difficult to reach in there and add the strip later. So I'm going to put this one a little bit off center, but I'm not going to take off the liner yet. And then I'm just going to roll this up and secure it down. By the way, this, I did not invent this. This is a technique called a sour cream container. I have never seen sour cream sold in containers like this, but that's what it's always been called, and it's kind of my go-to quick party favor template. You know, I use this a lot whenever I need to make a quick party favor template. And I'm going to reach in here and I'm going to pull the liner off of this. If you don't have fingernails, you can use like a paper piercer to do that. Just kind of squish it shut. And then I'm going to put some adhesive along that edge. So when you close it up, we're closing them perpendicular. We're closing each end. It's like a tube, and we squish it perpendicular to each other. Kind of like, you could probably do this with a toilet paper roll, but I don't like to do candy in toilet paper rolls because they're toilet paper rolls. It kind of grosses me out. But you can roll up, just like we did with the Christmas crackers. Actually, that's what we did. We cut our cardstock into quarters. That's how we did that. So, you know, same idea. All right. Oh, I probably should have left that liner on before I put my candies in. These are the almond ones. Doesn't really matter. Use whatever candy you like. And we're using a dark vellum, so I mean, it doesn't even matter the color of the wrappers. It's not really going to affect anything. And then I'm just going to pinch the top shut here. Now, if you want to add a little extra strength and flair, I really don't think you need the extra strength because we used a really strong adhesive, but you can use a paper crimper. See, I love to grab these. People are probably like, oh my gosh, where'd you find that? Because I do not get rid of my paper crafting tools. I'm like, you know what? These are bought and paid for. I guarantee anything will come back in style, so I keep them. So I just crimp that, and that gives me a little extra protection there. For the decorating, I'm just using some silver mirrored cardstock here, and I'm going to punch out a couple scallop circles. And I'll get another one right there. Okay, one of these I'm going to fold in half, and I think it's pretty symmetrical. I'm pretty sure I can just line that up to fold it. I'm not going to score it or anything. I think I can manage folding it in half just fine. And I will put a little smidgen of adhesive on either side just to give it a little bit of sticking power onto the vellum, so it'll look nice and neat. I don't need a lot. We're going to put that right over that top opening. This is going to be the area we hang it from, and it's going to reinforce where we're going to put our string. And then we're going to grab a paper hole punch. I really like this. This is called a crocodile. It's a great Christmas gift idea if you have a crafter in your life. It's wonderful because it punches through like tin and lightweight wood and chipboard and stuff, so it's very, very useful. And I am going to crimp this end too, but that's optional. If you like the look of it, do it. If you don't like the look of it, it really doesn't give you that much benefit because this is the top. I kind of put it in a little crooked, so my crimping is not perfect, so you know, maybe I wouldn't do it next time. This one came out really well, but that doesn't really matter. It's there to keep it nice and strong. And for this, I'm actually going to stamp a to and from on here, and I'm using this really handy little to and from stamp from our sponsor, Rubber Stamp Tapestry, and I'm just going to put that in right there. Whoops, and I flipped it over. Okay, so now I'm going to show you two different ways you can emboss this so you have a little pattern on here. I didn't have any snowflake embossing folders, but what I did have was one of these texture plates. And you can find these in your big box craft stores, probably online. I think I got this, like, they still make them, but I got this about 13 years ago, I think, at Walmart, and very inexpensive. You get a pattern on each side, and you usually get like a box of between 6 and 10, so you get a lot of designs. So what you want to do to use this with your die cutting machine is you want to put it down, kind of make sure you're over a bunch of snowflakes that you want to emboss. Then on top of that, you're going to put your squishy mat. Okay, now because this is thick, this is going to take the place of one of your cutting pads. So what I have here is my base plate. Okay, then I'm going to put my texture plate down. It's going to act just like a cutting pad because it's that thick. And then I'm just going to put, I got my squishy pad on top. You could use a sheet of rubber gasket from the hardware store if you don't have this. And then I'm going to put down my cutting plate. And let me just grab my machine real quick so you can see. I'm just going to crank that through. And see, if it feels like it's really tight, like it doesn't want to go through, you need to loosen up the sandwich. It means you either have your extra plate on there you forgot about, or you've just got too much you're trying to force through. But look at that, you get that really pretty, very subtle effect, and it's not so raised like an embossing folder would be that you wouldn't be able to write on the back. You can definitely write on the back. Now let's say you have this, but you don't have the machine. I'm going to show you how to use that as well, because I also think that's a really good technique to know how to do. So what you do if you want to use these texture plates without a embossing machine is you just need a stylus. So I'm just going to lay this down here. Now it really helps if you can tape this down. So I'm going to grab a little tape and I'm just going to tape it down in a couple spots so it doesn't move. I'm going to figure out where I want it. This will be all right. Now you can also rub the back of this paper, rub this with wax paper, and that will make it your embossing tools glide a little bit more. And there are different styluses. I generally like the one with a larger ball end. I find these work really well. And they also have ones that are smaller. These are usually sold by companies that make brass stencils, but sometimes you can just find them like in your clay aisle, because they also make them for clay or doing rolled paper flowers. So you probably have something in your stash that will work all right anyway. And you can kind of go over the whole area that you want to emboss, like pretty broadly. And you can kind of find your design this way, because these aren't transparent. You can't like see through them like a brass stencil would be. You can't really use this with a light box. Now once you have determined where your designs are, then you can just kind of go around and just kind of trace the designs a little bit better. You can also use something like this. This is called I think like an embosser or impressor or something like that. And you can kind of roll over it like this. And Fiskars actually makes one that's like a little tool you hold that's got 3 little embossing balls on it. They all do the same thing. So it's just figuring out what is best for you. Now the downside to this, I will tell you, is that if you were doing a bunch of these, this would get real tough on your hands after a while. So, and it is a little more, it's quite a bit more time consuming. So I just want to make mention of that, just so you know. But look, you get the same effect. Okay, got that same effect right there. In fact, if I was doing this, I think I would probably emboss a sheet and then I would punch it out. That way you don't have to try to get around the edges and have a little piece of cardstock sliding around on you. But, you know, 2 different ways to get the exact same technique depending on what you have for supplies. So now back to this guy. We've got our, what do we do with our little label? Okay, I found it. We got our little label here. I'm just going to punch a small hole to attach it with some string up here at the top. And I'm going to use some blue striped baker's twine. Now keep in mind, you can use whatever color you like for this, and you can use this for any occasion. It doesn't have to be a winter or Christmas theme. You could do it for Valentine's. I'm always, you know, I remember when my kids were little, because I had 3 kids and they were always in different grades, so I would end up making like 90 Valentines with them, and so I was always trying to come up with cute, easy to make ideas, and this one we've done a couple times. So you can, you know, change up the theme to match whatever occasion you're going to do. And I think the baker's twine is really nice because you can keep everything monochrome, and whenever you're working with monochrome, it's easier to design because you don't have so many variables with colors. But it's just going to catch the lights on the Christmas tree and be just really pretty. And if you want to save some time, of course, if you were doing like Valentine's, for instance, you could get a Valentine pattern paper paper and trim it up and do the same thing and stamp your tags. That would save you a little bit of time as opposed to making all of your pattern paper. But I do think it's nice to be able to make your own custom pattern paper, and I think that's a lot of the reason a lot of us started stamping, is because we wanted that option and that versatility. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed this tutorial, and make sure you check out the links in the video description for a full supply list. Thank you so much for watching, and check out our sponsor, Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them at pegstamps.com and use the coupon code to save 20% on all of your stamps. Thanks again. Until next time, happy crafting.